Hello and welcome to our course on Microsoft Project 2013, the award-winning project management software for your desktop. My name is Toby and I'm going to be your instructor on this course. Let me talk first about who this course is for. I hope that anybody who wants to learn how to use Microsoft Project 2013 will get a lot out of this course. But when I was planning the course, I had three particular groups of people in mind. First of all, those people who've never used project management software before. One word of warning for everybody, including that first group though, I am going to assume that you're familiar with the basic language of projects and basic principles like a schedule. You may even be familiar with terms such as critical path and resources and over allocation. Now, even if you are familiar with these terms, I'll need to explain them with particular reference to Microsoft Project as we work through the course. But if you know nothing about project management at all, you may find some aspects of this course a bit of a struggle, and it will be a good idea to get some background reading in first on project management in general. The second group of people are people who've used a very old version of Microsoft Project, a version before the ribbon was introduced. Microsoft Project has changed a lot in the last 2 or 3 versions, and although some of the fundamental principles are exactly the same as they were 15 years ago, some principles have changed a bit, and there are many new additions to what you can do and the tools that are available in Microsoft Project. The third group of people are the people who have used one of the more recent versions of Project, and for them I'll be focusing on the specific changes in this version. Not only are there some changes to the aspects of the interface such as the ribbon, but there are some functional changes as well. Now let me talk about the structure of the course. I've arranged the course into a number of units which are in turn grouped into chapters, and I believe that this forms a logical sequence for learning Project pretty much from scratch. If you've used Microsoft Project before, particularly a recent version, you may feel that you can skip some of these sections or go through them quickly. That's entirely your choice. I would warn you that even things that you may think you're familiar with, fairly basic things like using online help or using the ribbon, have changed in this version. However, if you're happy that you can cope with minor changes, or you can check the online help yourself for these kinds of change, then it's entirely your choice whether you want to skip forward so that you get into the nitty-gritty of scheduling projects and using Microsoft Project more quickly. If you're starting from scratch, I suggest that you don't skip the early sections, even if they appear to be on topics that you're quite familiar with, because the way that Microsoft Project works is subtly different in many cases from other desktop products, and it's worth knowing some of the tools and tricks of the trade which will help you much later on when we get into the more advanced use of Microsoft Project. Another important point to bear in mind with this course is that we do not cover the server products associated with Microsoft Project. I will mention 1 or 2 features of them from time to time, but they're not covered in any level of detail on this course, and also that we're not covering the programming of Microsoft Project on this course, the use of Project VBA. We are primarily only looking at the desktop project management product itself, and there is plenty to learn in a course like this one on that basic desktop project to get you really started and to build you up to a really good level of skill in Microsoft Project. And talking about those desktop project products, there are basically 2 of them. There is a Project Standard and a Project Professional. Now, there are quite a lot of differences in them when you look at the server side of things, but fundamentally virtually everything on this course can be done using Project Standard. I'm actually going to be using Project Professional on the course, and I will point out the 1 or 2 things you can do in Project Professional that you can't do in Project Standard, but there really are only 1 or 2 of them that affect this course. If you have Project Standard, that's absolutely not a problem. You're going to be able to do this course absolutely fine with Project Standard. Now, as part of this course, you should have a whole set of exercise files. The file names will be similar to these. There will be about this many with about these names. The actual list may vary. It does change a little over time, but make sure you know where those files are. They should be available on your device, and from time to time I will be referring to these, and I'll be asking you to make your own versions of these or to use the versions you're provided with. So make sure you know where that set of files is kept. Now, in Project 2013, Microsoft have tried to make the product usable with a touchscreen. Now, to be fair, there were certain things you were able to do in the previous version associated with Project 2010 where you could use a touchscreen for certain things. But to have general usage of a product like this with touch, really Project 2013 is the first version. I'm going to incorporate coverage of some of the gestures and techniques to use with a touchscreen while I'm going through the course, but it would be an extremely tedious job if I did everything on the course twice, once with keyboard and mouse and once with touchscreen. So I'm really going to use touchscreen from time to time, explain what I've done, go through the main gestures and try to use touch in a number of places as an example. But there really isn't time to do everything twice, and I think both people that are using touch and those who don't use touch would be equally frustrated if I did do everything twice. Having said that, the PC that I am recording this course on is a touchscreen PC. It also uses hand gestures in front of the screen, but for a course that you're going to follow on screen, me using hand gestures in front of the screen isn't really going to work. So I am only going to cover mouse mode, as I'll call it, as one option and touch mode as the other during the course. But if you've got a touchscreen device, I think you're going to find that you can do just about everything in Microsoft Project that you need to, although I would warn you that in some cases the accuracy of touch can be an issue, and to some extent if you've got nice thin fingers you're better off than somebody like me who has rather fat fingers, I'm afraid. The next thing to mention is that I am running Project 2013 here on Windows 8. If you're using Windows 7, there will be some differences, not an awful lot, but you will notice one or two differences in places. I'll try to point those out as we go along, because I am also testing what I'm doing on Windows 7 as well. And something that's equally important is that the resolution on which I'm recording this is a 4:3 aspect ratio resolution. It's not widescreen. You may well have one of the widescreen resolutions on your device. Also, depending on the resolution of your device, you may see different amounts of things on the screen. This can be extreme as things like seeing different content on the ribbon. I'm currently looking at the start screen for Project Professional 2013. If you are able to see that start screen, and I'll talk about that in just a moment, you may look at yours and you may look at mine and you may think, well, they look completely different. Well, there can be substantial differences, partly because of the screen resolution and partly because of themes, windows, backgrounds and so on, some of which we're going to talk about during the course. But as long as you can see something on the left that says project and a list that says recent and an open other projects thing there, and then these boxes in the middle or some variant on these boxes in the middle, then I'm sure you'll be fine. And the ways in which these things are different I will explain as we go through the early stages of the course. Now, I mentioned just now that I'd talk about seeing this start screen. If you already have Microsoft Project 2013 installed, either the standard version or the professional version, and you can start it up either from one of the tiles on the start screen or Windows 8 or from the start menu on Windows 7, and you can actually see this screen, then you can actually finish following this section, because the rest of this section is going to be devoted to those people who haven't yet got Project 2013 installed. I'm not actually going to show you how to install it, but I'm going to talk about how to get hold of a copy of it and point you in the right direction in terms of where to get the instructions to install it. But if it's already installed and running on your machine, you can move on to the next section now. If not, read on. So for the rest of this section, I'm talking to those of you who maybe don't yet have Project installed. And the first place I'm going to direct you is to part of Microsoft.com, to this particular page. Now, given that I may well have recorded this course sometime before you watch it, the page itself may have changed, but one thing's for certain, Microsoft will still have an equivalent page there. You're looking for the requirements for Project Professional 2013. You may well need to do a search, either a Google or a search within Microsoft.com to find it, but you'll find a page that gives you those system requirements. Now, the system requirements from the point of view of project come into approximately two categories. One of them is the hardware requirements. You need a device that satisfies this minimum hardware specification. You can sometimes make project work on lower spec devices, but it almost invariably leads you to a headache, and this isn't a particularly high specification for modern devices anyway. So make sure you've got a device that satisfies that hardware requirement. And then the other key requirement is the operating system requirement. And as far as desktop operating systems are concerned, you need Windows 7 or Windows 8. If you have XP, if you have Vista, then I'm afraid that's no good. You're going to have to upgrade your desktop operating system in order to run Microsoft Project on your desktop. Now, there are some other requirements here. There's requirements for graphics, including a minimum screen resolution. There are a list of supported browsers and also some details of the touch requirements if you intend to use touch with Project 2013. So you need to take note of those as well. So once you've established that the device you're planning to use will be able to run Project, the next question is how to get yourself a copy of Project. Now, of course, you can buy a copy. You could buy it from Microsoft. You could use your favorite online store. Maybe your local computer store will have Project Professional or Project Standard in stock. But the good news is, at the time of recording this, that it is possible to get a trial version of Microsoft Project Professional from Microsoft. Now, the particular offer and the terms of the offer do tend to vary, but at the time of recording you could get a 60-day free trial from Microsoft, and that includes a guided element where it will actually give you some supporting help and information throughout the 60-day trial, which I think you might find very useful. And depending on how much time you have available, you may well find that a 60-day trial is plenty of time to work your way through this course and to make sure that you're comfortable about buying Project, if indeed that's what you intend to do. There's a page there which gives you access today to the Project Professional 2013 60-day trial. You may well need to do another Google, or you may need to do a search within Microsoft.com at some future date if this actual page isn't here. But if there is a Project trial version available, you should be able to find it without too much trouble. One other thing to be aware of is that there are both 32-bit and 64-bit versions of Microsoft Project available. Now, you would generally be best advised to install the 64-bit version if your device will support it. But one or two things to warn you about. One of them is that if you have Microsoft Office 2013 32-bit installed, I believe you'll have trouble installing Microsoft Project 64-bit. And also, if you do try to install the 64-bit version, there are one or two other scenarios where you can run into trouble. Having said that, I'm not going to try and list what will and won't work here. That's somewhat outside the scope of what I do. I'll leave that between you and Microsoft. But if you download a trial version, you're given the option of either 32 or 64. If you download the 64-bit version, try to install that and it doesn't work, I'm afraid you'll have to download the 32-bit. If you have a bought version, then normally with bought versions they include both. So if you try 64 and it doesn't work, then try the 32. In terms of the functionality, what you can do with them, they're the same. The only real significant difference is in the performance. This course is actually being run with a 32-bit version of Project Professional 2013 running on Windows 8. So when you have acquired your copy of Project 2013, you have installed it and preferably you have activated it as well, you will finish up able to start it from the start screen in Windows 8 or the start menu in Windows 7, and you will get to the point that we saw earlier on where you have the start screen, and this is our starting point for using Microsoft Project 2013. But just before we open it up and start to use it, I'd like to just spend a little bit of time talking about what's new in Project 2013, particularly for the benefit of those who've used Project before, and that's what we're going to cover in the next section, so please join me for that.